Hi and welcome to Contagious Care, the Elevate Your Wellbeing series on how we can be more contagious in our care for others, but starting off with being caring towards ourselves. So welcome to this Tuesday morning. Please say hi if you're here, and welcome to all our new members as well over this past week. And the topic today relates very much to John's topic last session on trust. It was a really powerful session. Who enjoyed that session? Please let me know if you're here, and also if you happen to get John's session. He's a very powerful speaker, and what a wonderful topic that was on how we can go about trusting someone else in relationship and being trustworthy ourselves. And that really connects, that topic today connects with how today we can forgive and why is it so hard to do that. And it also connects with the topic that I gave last Tuesday, which was on not letting our past dictate our current or our future life. So come on board, give us a thumbs up or a love heart to let us know if you're in today, and the topic, why is it so hard to forgive? If you could just put in the chat section right now what areas of forgiveness are important to you. Like, why would you like to be more forgiving? Just a simple answer. Why would you like to be more forgiving? Just in general, in your relationships. Would people call you a forgiving person? Do you hold grace and mercy? What would they describe you as? So just put that in the chat box as well. So who knows the leading cause of disease on this planet? The highest leading cause. Answer that if you have. There you go. You can. What is the leading cause of disease on this planet? Because that relates to forgiveness as well. And because I'm not seeing any answers, I'll tell you, it's stress, okay? It's not heart attacks. It's not the things that we think it would be, but it's stress. And the damaging effects that stress can have on our entire bodies, our mind and our spirit, and obviously our relationships. So just a little backstory here. For those of you who don't know me, I was diagnosed with breast cancer back in 2009. And later down the track, it really made me reflect on a few really significant questions. How well equipped am I at retaining my well-being through a crisis? How can I prevent some of the life stresses that I experience? We all experience life stresses. Are we working at trying to prevent the ones that we can prevent? And do I have wellness daily habits as a pattern in my life? So I'm just being told to add here to bring you on the camera. Please give me a thumbs up or love heart, because something's going wrong with the camera today and I'm just not sure who's here. So if you could please let me know and just engage with me, because something's weird's happening. Okay, so do we have wellness daily habits in our life? And that's why I wrote the Elevate Your Wellbeing workshop, to enable us all to be able to, in just one quick day, look at the areas of wellbeing we need to look into. And one of them specifically is, how do we relate better with people, and are we a gracious, forgiving person? But there's some contraindications here to this topic. It's complicated. It's not, forgiveness is one of the most complicated topics that I have ever come across in my whole life, to be honest. Kayla's saying, I'd like to forgive more to free myself and my hubby and therefore my relationship of negative emotional hurts. Thank you so much, Kayla, for your honesty. And it's so true that there is freedom in that, but then it's an equation. And the other part of the equation is apologies. And so we're not going to look at that today, but we will be looking at that. John and I are going to do a on that in a couple of weeks on just the detail and the intricacies of apologies. But we'll just look at forgiveness today to get our hearts ready. But there's another whole part of the equation. And particularly, there's some contraindications here with domestic violence. And I really want to note that straight away. When there is domestic violence, whether it's verbal, mental, social, physical, or sexual, it's very premature if it's misused because it reinforces, forgiveness will reinforce the already dysfunctional patterns that are occurring in that type of relationship. And so we need to understand the domestic violence cycle. Otherwise, in domestic violence, the wounded person then feels more guilty if they're asked to forgive and they can't, particularly when the person who is violating them has this cycle of repeating the same patterns. And when that abuse continues further, it makes it so much more complicated, and boundaries, really clear boundaries, need to be set. So I'm not talking about that ongoing violating behavior here, and I really want to make that clear from the beginning. Hello, Musha, Rukmini, welcome, and welcome David, and welcome Kathy also. So please put in the chat bar, why would you like to be a more forgiving person? Now, just 2 years ago, to just help you piece parts of the jigsaw puzzle for me, I was privileged to be involved in co-authoring this book, Elevate Your Wellbeing, and it became an international bestseller. But it was a long journey, and sadly, it was quite a painful journey that led me to write in the book the wisdoms that I had gained. And the chapter I chose I was just asked to write on relationships, and I could choose my topic. I could have chosen 1,000 topics on relationships. But I chose forgiveness because I saw it as the most vital thing that there's so little work done on, and because it's such a complicated topic. So I'm going to share a personal story that connects why I do what I do, and also how my book chapter topic on forgiveness evolved. Because you see, forgiveness is what I'm really, really passionate about. But this topic is really hard to share, and you'll see why in a minute. As I share my story, could I please ask you a favor to just click a thumbs up or a love heart, or show me that things are resonating for you, because it's hard sharing such a deep, meaningful topic with a camera and not having that engagement. Now, speaking of engagement, people are saying, Christine Clare's here. Hi, Christine. And Kathy's saying, I'd love to be more forgiving, which means less judgmentalism on my part, I hope. And Annie, hi, welcome. Great to see you here. So if you've just hopped in, please write why you would like to be more forgiving. Why is this topic so important to you? So feel free, as I share my story, to just add any comment in the chat box, just so I'll know you are there, because this is the hardest ever topic that I have ever had to speak on. So here goes. If you're with me back in 2008, you'd be looking at a woman who, over a period of time, a period of a year, I was being emotionally and mentally abused by a particular person. It wasn't just face to face. it was through emails also. He did it through emails, and every time I went to the computer, I was so scared to just even open up the computer for fear of another email presenting me with lies and stuff that I had never done. And I feared getting another abusive email from this person every time I went to the computer. And I understood that what was underneath for him was his inability to face his own shame about other stuff, completely different stuff that I wasn't connected with. But blaming and scapegoating and denial, it seemed, were easier for him in the short term with that small equation that I was connected with. That was easier for him, it seemed, in the short term. And during this time, I felt so intensely sad, disappointed, just so fearful of him. And I felt really unsafe in this person's presence. And I knew that I couldn't fix him. That was his responsibility. But I knew what my responsibility was, and that was to choose to set really clear and tight boundaries and making sure I wasn't alone with him. That meant if I had to be with him, and on occasions that was important for the greater and wider good of others, I would always ensure that John was by my side. And if that couldn't happen, then I wasn't present. And over many years, I just craved. We've all had hunger cravings. I can't tell you the depth of this craving for me to have a deep, regretful, remorseful apology for all that he'd done. But nothing of that nature was forthcoming. And over a period of time, despite not having any genuine apology, I chose over time to inwardly forgive him. So I wasn't living with bitterness and resentment that would just eat away at my soul. I knew in my heart of hearts, I knew that I needed to release the past so that I could enjoy the present moment and all that God was offering me in different circles of my life. I knew I needed to release what was holding me back from all of that. So what were my learnings in this? I made a decision to record my learnings and act on what I'd learned through this process. And from those learnings, I designed a 2-day program called The Power of Apology, the very thing I was craving for. I researched apologies big time. I just researched it from the gurus in the field, from authors, and I realized in relationship education, because as you know me, that is my field of work, and I could see a real gap. There was communication skills, conflict resolution work until the cows came home, but there wasn't enough, there was hardly any work on the complexity of forgiveness. And for me at that stage, what I needed was the intricacies of just what apologies mean to somebody and what type of apologies. And I'll go into this in another session, but it's looking at, I designed this program called The Power of Apologies that look at 5 R's: regret, remorse, taking responsibility, retribution, knowing that you need to make up to the person that you have wronged, and also taking responsibility, which means changing your behavior, making resolve to do things differently. And if that doesn't happen, then you know that the apology doesn't mean anything. Anybody can say words. So it was those things that I researched, and thus the Power of Apology program came into being. And after years of running this program for hundreds of health professionals, it was just a 1-day program to start with, then it became a 2-day program, and then I let it out for the whole community because I just saw this as so powerful and people having their lives being changed. And so after years of running this program, I had a call from this person saying that he'd like to do the program himself. And that, as you can imagine, just blew me right away. Little did he know at that time that if it wasn't for him and what he'd done, the program wouldn't have existed. So I have great pride in this program that I now call Freedom Through Forgiveness, because it enables people to identify their different languages of apology and realize the absolute importance of being multilingual in these types of apology if they want to restore broken relationships that are worth restoring. And it allows people to experience that freedom that forgiveness really, truly does bring. Most people do this program as a preventative measure for the well-being of themselves and their relationships. But this person who had been abusing me had to get so low in his life, both personally, in his family situation, and in his career, before signing up for something like this. And he's now a transformed man. And so much so that he has given me permission to share his story for the benefit of others. This would not be a story I could share today if it wasn't for this man transforming. Can you believe that? So just through this 2-day program and all the work that he did himself, which I'm so proud of him for doing, he chose to invest in his own self-growth, to take an honest look at himself, and to invest thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars going to another country to get the right program for him, doing all sorts of things to actually change. So it required a lot of work for him, and he's still a work in progress, like I am, like we all are. But we can be all transformed. That's the good news, if we need to be and we want to be. And if this man had a turning point, he had a real turning point in the 2-day Freedom Through Forgiveness program, and the power of, which was called Power of Apology then, and through a particular emotional allergy exercise, there was transformation that was taking place. And he even came to my book launch, and bless him, that night humbly shared his deep, remorseful apology with me, a genuine depth of apology that I had desired for so long, for years, yet I had eventually let go of ever getting that. I never imagined that would happen, because I had to release the need for that. That was my individual work. So what does forgiveness mean to you? That's enough of my story. What does forgiveness mean to you? And I'm just going to look at the chat box. So Annie's saying you would like to be more forgiving for your own health and your well-being. Christine is saying to maintain strong and true relationships, because yes, they can't be authentic if we're holding things back, even if it's a tiny bit of bitterness or jealousy or whatever. The relationship doesn't have its purest form. We miss out on so much of what God wants to offer us. Sorry, I'm getting teary, but there's just gold out there, and it's right before our eyes. But we cannot see it if we have bitterness and resentment still blocking the way forward in our relationships. So what does forgiveness mean to you? It means different things for different people, and I would love to hear what it means to you. What are your first thoughts or feelings when you hear that word? Please just put a word in the chat box. So this is all about not letting your past dictate your present or your future life. We need to heal from the wounds from our past. And so it's interesting that the word forgiving can be broken up into forgiving. Have you ever thought of that? I wished I had the word up right now for you, but just imagine forgiving. It's broken up into 2 parts. What are you giving when you give forgiveness? Can you put that in the chat box? what are you actually giving to the person who has wronged you? But what are you also giving to yourself? And there's a third element here. What are you giving to your relationship that has been stuffed up? Just put in the comments anything that you are giving, because forgiveness is a priceless gift. Well, just to help you along, there's many things that we're giving when we give the gift of forgiveness to the person who has wronged us. Sometimes it needs to be verbal when they've requested forgiveness from us. Obviously, it needs to be verbal forgiveness, then a verbal response. But if they haven't requested it and they're just still denying and blaming and scapegoating, we can't offer verbal forgiveness that's just going to escalate things and put fuel on the fire. But it's important to have that quiet forgiveness in our soul. So what are we forgiving what are we giving to the wrongdoer when we quietly even give forgiveness from our soul? Christine is saying, renewal. I'm giving renewal. Yes, you're giving a new relationship. Means going back. You're starting again. You are repent. Repent means going back, turning away from your old ways. Renewal is the fruit of that. And when we give forgiveness, we are wiping that slate clean and bringing renewal to the relationship. And particularly that renewal happens so quickly when the person changes their behavior. When they don't, it's a totally different scenario. And that's why forgiveness is complicated. I'm talking about patterns. I'm not talking about once-off thing. I'm talking about patterns of behavior. Kayla is saying thankful and appreciative for your vulnerability, Heather. Thank you, Kayla. I really appreciate that comment. Means heaps to me. So what are we giving? Keep telling me what we're giving. We're giving the person pardon. When someone has done us wrong, we're pardoning them. It's almost like we're letting them go. We're not letting them off the hook, because there needs to be accountability and justice and all of that. And that's what my 5 R's are in the Power of Apology, Now Freedom Through Forgiveness workshop. And that's why it takes 2 days, because there's so much in it. I'm just giving you the tiniest snippet here. But we're giving a gift to them because we're releasing them into the freedom of our forgiveness. It's like we're helping them to get over their own woundedness for stuffing up and doing such wrong, whether it's abuse on a huge scale, like in my case with verbal abuse that I was receiving and written on the emails, or whether it's a smaller thing, it still needs to be rectified. And Kathy's saying, giving grace to the other person and freedom to yourself. Thank you, Kathy. Such wisdom there. You are giving grace to the other person. It's an undeserved gift. That's what grace is. And freedom to yourself. My gosh, you are. It's a gift to them because you're releasing them into the freedom of your forgiveness, the gift to them. And by forgiving, it's a gift to yourself because you're releasing yourself from the chains that have bound you, because you're releasing yourself from the power that hurt has had over you. It's like a paper bag and another paper bag and another paper bag. I hope that analogy makes sense. I've just thought of that right this second. It's like you've got all these, you can't breathe if you are stuck in resentment and bitterness. So it's a gift to yourself as well. When you release yourself from the power the hurt has over you, there'll still be hurt. It doesn't go away. We don't have amnesia. We don't completely forget the experience. But like I said, with that beautiful story last session that I gave on the milestones versus the tombstone in forgiving others. No, we're not erasing or forgetting the past, but we are moving on from it. If we forget the Holocaust, where would we be? If we forget a lot of lessons in life, we will not remember to be different. So we won't necessarily forget, but we can use that memory every time it comes up, just like that man did in the session that I talked on not letting our past dictate our future. That beautiful man who saw the memory of his abuse, of his physical and sexual abuse as a child, he made that memory a milestone rather than a tombstone, as a reminder of how far he had come along with his healing, rather than focusing on the hurt. So, what are the stumbling blocks for you to forgiving? What are the stumbling blocks to other people who need to forgive you? Do you surmise? Do you imagine? Why is it so hard? I want to hear your answers to the question of this topic. Why is it so hard to forgive? Just jot anything down, because it's wisdom for the group. Isn't forthcoming because there's a huge stumbling block. We put these stone walls up and they become more and more as time goes on. And the stumbling block of, just don't feel like it. Hey, I haven't got the energy to do that. It's too hard. Or with judgment, they don't deserve it, you know? Or it might just be a case of wanting to get revenge, and you think that that's going to help you in the short term. But it doesn't even in the short term, and it certainly doesn't in the long term. Revenge just makes you a nasty person. It could be, I'm doing all the answers here. Come on, guys. What are the stumbling blocks to people in forgiving? Why do they find it so difficult to forgive? Why do you find it so difficult to forgive? I know this is a hard topic, but I'm coming here and showing up. So it's a gift to me if you can do the same with your answers. Kathy is saying, it feels at first like you are saying it doesn't matter, that you have been hurt. Yes, I didn't want to give you all the answers, and I'm so glad you said that, Kathy. That's why this is so complicated and so complex. It does feel like we're saying, I'll let you off the hook. Go do it again. It doesn't matter to me. It didn't really hurt. That's exactly how it feels. And when atrocities, personal atrocities like verbal abuse and physical abuse and nastiness have occurred, it does feel like we're saying it doesn't matter to us, but it does. That saying from childhood that I remember hearing all the time, sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. That's garbage. Words do hurt. And we need to have words coming from the wrongdoer that can help to heal. That accelerates our healing by 95%, I believe. But if it doesn't happen, and it didn't happen to me for a long time, we can still do 100% quiet forgiveness. And that's what I want to encourage you with. Welcome, Bridget and Kristen. It's great to have you here. And if you can just jot in, what would you like to be more forgiving with? And why do you think people struggle to forgive? So there's some other things as well. When they haven't apologized, it makes it really difficult to forgive. That can be a stumbling block. If they haven't shown any regret whatsoever. And another reason is they're not owning their actions. You know, if they're not taking responsibility for what they have done, it is impossible for us to gain trust in them again. And that's where the equation comes in. And that's why I asked John to speak on trust last session, because it's the trust, the accountability in owning up and saying, hey, I stuffed up here. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. I shouldn't have denied this for so long, what I was doing. I shouldn't hide behind my own shame. It takes a lot for a person to do the self-awareness themselves to get to that point. But that can be a stumbling block when they don't get to the point of changing their behavior. And so the behavior just keeps coming and we keep getting wounded. Kathy's saying it's difficult when they blame you for the problem. It's hard to forgive them. Yes, so you're getting blame and scapegoating coming onto you, and you know you've taken responsibility for what you needed to, but you're getting their crap that they won't take responsibility for, and you're the easiest person to have it dumped upon because they know that you know their shame. And I'll look at shame in a different session, but it's really important to know that that is really big in this equation. So another reason why it's so hard to forgive is because some people are more on the justice side of the spectrum rather than the mercy side. And do you know, justice down here and mercy down here, I'm not putting one up here and one down there because they're both so equally important. But if you have a different leaning on the spectrum towards justice, for some who hold justice really extremely highly, it can be difficult to choose forgiveness as an act of your will. And in the workshop, we do this continuum, and it really helps people work through how they can overcome that justice in letting go of them being the judge. So forgiveness doesn't mean condoning the action or forgetting it. It involves letting go of it. It releases the power that the hurt has had over us. So there's so much more I can give on forgiveness, so much more. But I'll just finish with a little story right now. And we will work on it in future sessions. And I really encourage you to come to the workshop because that is deep diving into it. You can see the workshop, the details of that on the Elevate Your Wellbeing Contagious Care Facebook group page with the section, the flyer I've put up there. But that's the only way we can deep dive into it, with activities that really help us heal. But this is just giving you a tiny, tiny snippet. But this story of the two wolves, one evening, an old Cherokee Indian told his grandson about a battle that goes on inside people. And he said, "My son, the battle is between two wolves inside us all. One is evil. It is anger, envy, jealousy, sorrow, guilt, self-pity, greed, arrogance, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego." That's a pretty ugly wolf, isn't it? And the Cherokee Indian told his son, the other wolf is good. It is joy. It is peace. It is love. It is hope, serenity, humility. It is kindness. It is benevolence. It is empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The grandson thought for a moment about it. And then he asked his grandfather, in this battle between the two wolves, which wolf wins? The old Cherokee simply replied, the one you feed. So which wolf are we going to feed today? Can I encourage you to be brave, to be life-giving, and let your light shine? And in doing that, take a step towards action and choose what you can forgive, even if it's just one step at a time. One step will help you take the next step. And hi, Rebecca, it's good to see you. Please feel free to put in your comments now as I close what you have gained from this session, because that will help you take the next step towards the wonderful, life-giving, powerful gift of forgiveness. See you next week.